Welcome to another episode of Pilots Say What, where we get to hear what pilots have to say. And my name is Zach. I'll be your host once again. If you've joined in before, then you know that weekly we have a podcast talking to different professionals in the aviation industry, especially when it comes around flight training. And today we'll be talking with Hamilton. Hamilton is one of our CFIs here at Thrust Flight, but Hamilton, he's a bit younger, and I think that makes for a nice thing to kind of highlight a little bit. I'm interested to get to kind of know you a little bit,
Yeah, of course.
and see what kind of goes through your mind when you come in to work every day,
For sure.
and kind of how you got here. But we'll dive into some of those things, and we'll get some tips and advice, of course, from Hamilton's perspective, like we usually do. Before we get too far into any of that, I'd like to give you an opportunity to introduce yourself briefly, if you don't mind.
Yeah, hello everybody. My name is Hamilton Grant. I am a CFI currently working for Thrust Flight. A bit newer to the line. Maybe been working about 3 months now, but I've been with Thrust Flight for quite a while now as I've went through kind of like a specialized high school program. So I've really been with Thrust for almost like 2-ish years now. So I've seen a lot of the company and how it's kind of grown and progressed and changed. So
I can imagine that, because like you said, you went to a specialized high school. We'll talk a little bit more about that because it's related to aviation. It's a high school
yeah,
related
of
to that.
course.
It's right across the airport, actually,
It
right?
is, yeah. Right across the runway, you see it's Rising Aviation High School. So.
Yes, Rising Aviation. There's still a lot to know about that school for me. What sort of got you interested in aviation? Was there a point? Was it the school? I mean, what is there that you can tell me?
That's actually a really good question. My aviation journey starts, my parents say, when I was 2 years old. I've been into flying as long as I can remember.
Yeah.
When I was small and growing up, I had to deal with a lot of health challenges,
Mhm.
which put me in the hospital for extended periods of time.
Mm.
And so my mother, my father, and my cousin, a couple other of my family members, my aunt, were all involved in the aviation industry. And
Okay.
there wasn't much to do in the hospital, so you hear flying stories from your family members, then you get into aviation, and then all of a sudden it's reading POHs in the hospital beds, and then you go home and fly on your flight sim.
That was like the thing.
It was, yeah, it's history from there. Really been into aviation as long as I can remember. I have a real passion for it.
What was the first opportunity that you had to actually like participate in aviation?
The first one that I really had, and it's when I knew I was definitely like bit by the bug, I guess, was a Make-A-Wish. I actually got a Make-A-Wish because of all those past sicknesses and all that. And
Mm-hmm.
I ended up doing a discovery flight for my
Okay.
first flight. I think I was around 6-ish years old, and I did the first flight. I said, yeah, this is something that I think is really cool.
Uh-huh.
And I knew I wanted to do it for sure as a career from there.
Yeah.
But that was probably my first major experience in aviation.
I don't know much about it, but it sounds like that was probably some difficult times to be going
It
through when you were
was.
younger,
It was.
and maybe that contributes to some of your mindset now.
No, I
I'm
appreciate
sure,
that.
I would imagine. But that being said, were you ever concerned that like what's it like now being able to do what it is that you've always
Oh,
wanted to do,
it's crazy.
and versus when you were younger and you're maybe concerned about that
I
kind of thing?
I tell so many people that, hey, what I'm doing now is just so surreal. Because maybe 5-ish years ago, I wasn't sure if I was going to get to do what I wanted to do in life. I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to accomplish this passion of mine. And
Yeah,
now to be able to look back on all those times and tell myself that, hey, I did it. It's wild. Now, of course, through the help of family, friends, trust,
absolutely.
flight schools, flight instructors. But to know that I did it, it's really wild, and it's honestly super surreal to now look at my past self and be like, remember when you looked up to all those flight instructors? You're one of them now. It's pretty
Yeah.
cool.
Were you ever concerned that some of the health, because in
Hmm.
in aviation, you have to be
Yeah,
tested,
yeah,
obviously,
of
and you have to go
course.
throgue a lot of parameters to make sure that you're fit to fly. Were you ever concerned that some of your health
Yeah.
wasn't going to allow
So
you to fly?
it was actually a pretty big thing. I guess I had childhood cancer growing up,
Mm-hmm.
so
Mm-hmm.
a lot of the implications, a lot of the medications that come
Mm-hmm.
with that disease. Uh, Obviously, you might have some trouble getting your FAA medical. So I had to jump through some hoops for sure to
Mm-hmm.
get my medical and to get all that solved out. And it was said, oh, you're fit to fly. You have all the requirements necessary. I can't stop you from flying. That's what
Right.
the FAA said. So I got my medical from there.
Sounds like an amazing achievement to me, and I already know how it seems like a difficult thing to get past the the medical in the
It
first place for
was.
almost anyone,
It was.
let alone if you go through a lot of the things that you're talking about
Hmm.
going through. I can only imagine.
Hmm.
But it sounds like you have a lot of gratitude for where you are, which is
I appreciate
really
that.
great to hear. You can kind of hear it. So, when you started flight training, how old were you?
I was around 15 when I
Okay.
started flight training.
Okay.
I soloed my first aircraft at 16. Then private and instrument both came at 17.
Mhm.
Commercial, multi, CFI, CFII all came at 18.
You have to kind of wait until you're 18 to get commercial and so on, right?
Yes, you do. Yeah.
Gotcha.
So my path was kind of special, the way I kind of advanced through the training course
Hmm.
here at Thrust. Since I was from my high school, a lot of the times I was physically too young to complete some of my ratings going through the course.
Hmm.
So I kind of was put on like a special track throughout all my courses and ratings, so I
Hmm.
could still get them pretty young, but I was still building on all the proper knowledge and experience that any other pilot would need.
It sounds like the Rising Aviation High School did play a role in that. Can you talk to me a little bit more about the Rising Aviation and how it did?
Yeah, they did. Yeah, I can. So Rising Aviation is a high school that's kind
Mhm.
of dedicated to getting students into and around the aviation community.
Mhm.
A lot of people like to think of it as just pilots. It's not. We have like maintenance professionals. Just to shout out a couple of my friends here, like for example, one of our students, Jocelyn, is going to Embry-Riddle for engineering. We got Ethan and James both wanted to do business aviation, one of which who's doing right seat work now. It's pretty cool. We got full-time aircraft mechanics. Garrett's working on aircraft maintenance right
Mhm.
now, working on airplanes. But the school is kind of specialized in that it can give students those maybe opportunities that maybe otherwise wouldn't be afforded to them
Mm.
while flying. I was one of the first three to start the program,
Oh wow.
at least for flying.
Mhm.
And it was nice because I could not only attend full time high school, but I could also attend full time flight school at the same time. It's a lot of work, but I wouldn't be able to get that opportunity anywhere else.
I'd like for more people to know about things like that,
Oh,
whether it
yeah.
be aviation or not, because there's things out there that help people kind of move
Yeah.
towards, and it's nice when you have family or friends that can kind of like point you in the right
Oh, yeah.
direction.
I agree.
So that's really nice. Yeah. Well, welcome from Rising Aviation to Thrust Flight.
Thank
That's
you.
really good to hear.
Appreciate
It's
it.
good to see you in a black shirt as well.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here.
I want to ask you a little bit about what was some of the most difficult parts of becoming a pilot in
Mm.
your flight training.
I think sometimes what's important to understand about aviation is that it ebbs and flows, right? The career path is very cyclical, even
Hmm.
of itself.
Hmm.
There's a lot of downs and ups in your career, and that goes with flight training.
Hmm.
Uh, Probably the most. I'm trying to think. Probably the hardest time I had was probably my commercial rating. Just
Hmm.
learning to have the confidence to maneuver the aircraft, the technical know-how to take an aircraft and reposition it somewhere else was something that I had some struggles with. But my flight instructors worked with me on it. A big
Hmm.
one too was like confidence and feeling like I could actually be pilot in command of this aircraft. That was another big hurdle that I feel like I had to jump over, and I'm doing fine at now because I'm a flight instructor.
Yeah.
But I think those are the two biggest ones. Probably some of the technical aspects of like flying and maneuvering the aircraft, and then the confidence to be PIC, make some of those really hard PIC decisions were two of my biggest.
I'm curious about the confidence thing. I feel like there's always a stage that
Yeah.
each student pilot has to go through that allows them or that kind of pushes them to grow in their confidence. Have
Yeah.
you seen that in some of the students you've had?
I would say for everybody it's slightly different, right? I think confidence has a lot to do with our experience inside of the field, as long as you're not egotistical or anything like that, right?
Right.
But it has a lot to do with your experience inside of the field and the proof that you can operate the aircraft or fill out this weight and balance or file an IFR flight plan or do a SNAV log. And I think a lot of that has to do with experience.
Hmm.
You see a big one when students finish out a private, having done their first solo. They're like, okay, wait a second. I
Yeah.
can fly an aircraft now without an instructor, and that's a huge confidence boost. You'll
Yeah.
see another one with like their commercial cross country when they're flying really far distances now, have to literally think about everything that they possibly could have to do with flight planning and flying long distances and weight planning and all of this stuff, right?
Yeah.
Um, and then they do that solo, and they're like, okay, I got a little bit more experience now, right?
Yeah.
And you get to be a CFI, and you save your first student on the landing. Your student just bombs an approach or something like that, right? And you step in, my controls, you save them. You go, oh, I just saved this guy's life or something like that, right? And you
Yeah.
go, okay, well, I'm actually pretty good at this. Or take it even a step further. Not too long ago, I just had my first student pass, and that was for me like, yeah, I got this, right?
Yeah.
I gave that person the necessary tools that they needed to go and pass this super hard exam, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's milestones, right, that are based off of experience.
And I guess what I hear out of that is that there's value in celebrating the wins and recognizing when you've made growth.
100%. No,
Yeah.
I agree with that. And I tell all my students that there's always work that can normally be done to achieve those wins and those goals.
Mhm.
But as long as you realize that there's always work to be done, hitting those goals will be even richer when you do.
It's a lot of work in general
Yeah,
to come into this
totally.
field. I've been talking to some of the new students who come from different backgrounds in terms of career and
Hmm.
things like that, right? And maybe they didn't know they wanted to be in aviation, and this stuff is hard.
Yeah,
But it seems like it's almost always harder than what they were doing before.
yeah,
But they seem much more willing to do the work.
yeah.
I wonder what that is a little bit. Do you have an
Yeah,
idea?
I honestly think a lot of it is passion, right? I think passion a lot of the time for this career field leads to perseverance. It's why you see people who enjoy aviation, who actually really love it, love flying, love taking their family up. They normally are pretty good pilots because they have passion for the career field. Uh, that passion, which leads to perseverance, is huge, right?
Mm.
One thing I will say, again, I mentioned it before, but you're going to hit roadblocks in this career. It doesn't matter who you are. You could be Top Gun himself, even Top Gun, Maverick, right? He
Yeah.
hit roadblocks, barricades in his flight training career, so you're going to hit those eventually.
Hmm.
What's important is, I guess, like the cliche, how you pick yourself up, right?
Hmm.
How you conduct yourself after you maybe hit one of these roadblocks and or barricades, is very important, and perseverance is a huge part of that.
Yeah, I can imagine, and I like the way you put that because I always hear discipline and
Yeah,
motivation and like those are always going to be factors in almost anything you do, right?
yeah,
But and a lot of people say don't rely on how you feel, right? Because like that's not going to carry you everywhere,
hmm
and I think I hear truth in that, but I'm curious about how that applies here because when I talk to the CFIs, when I talk to the students, when I talk to the airline
yeah,
pilots, when I talk to the retired guys, when
yeah,
I talk to the helicopter guys, like there's something different going on when they talk
yeah.
about you don't talk to empty people. You don't talk to people
No,
who are
that's so true.
bored. You talk to people who are excited and are passionate and have opinions
Yeah,
and are standing. So I guess I'm wondering like how much of a role do you think motivation and discipline plays versus something like passion in this
yeah.
situation?
And that's a great question,
Yeah.
and I would say that it's kind of they're kind of the same, right?
Mhm.
Having passion in a career field or just in general, right, is correlative to having that motivation and discipline or
Mhm.
whatever. I don't think it's any one or the other. Of course, aviation is a very technical field, right? You
Mhm.
need to be on your game every time you take a person up in the flight because that could mean the life for not only you, but another person or a group of people, right? So
Mhm.
there's obviously that seriousness and that aspect to it, but it's also super important to recognize that you're having fun, doing what you do, right?
Mhm.
Because that I think is what leads to that discipline, that perseverance,
I
right?
see what you're saying. Yeah, I mean, I feel like discipline itself takes a bit of motivation,
Yeah, of course.
or I would say, sorry, discipline itself maybe takes a bit of passion to
Yeah,
even commit to
yeah,
discipline. For me, I feel that way. I've always kind of envied people who are able to just apply themselves out of pure
yeah,
grit,
yeah,
and I don't really relate to
yeah,
that. Not that maybe I couldn't if I really have to survive that way, right? But I'm gonna look for another way.
yeah, yeah.
Um, so that sounds pretty cool. Has the excitement worn off at all for you at all?
It really hasn't.
Yeah.
It's some days I won't lie, it's hard, right? It's a hard job. There's a lot that goes wrong. The job of a CFI is like constantly putting out
Hmm.
little tiny fires. So
Yeah.
honestly, to be completely honest, it's hard sometimes.
Yeah.
But there's nothing like heading home or you're on the last flight of the day and the sun is just setting and you're at sitting at 6,000 feet and 120 knots over the ground, which are small numbers, I know, but uh, it's like, wow, I really did this. It's like, oh, I'm doing something that not a lot of people get to do, or I'm seeing the world from a perspective that not a lot of people get to see, and there's like admiration from that.
Mm.
But it's kind of a mix of the two. More admiration than like, oh my gosh, I got to go into work today. Normally, it's not that.
Yeah,
But
I mean, it's gonna take a little bit of grit no matter
yeah, oh
what.
yeah, no, it's true.
Especially, I think I was talking to someone about how, look, if you're an instrument and you're having to study like the IFR
Yeah,
or whatever,
no,
and it's like, okay, maybe that's not that fun.
yeah, yeah,
You
oh
know,
yeah,
so it's gonna take a little bit of that push no matter
yeah.
what. What was something for you that you're like, wow, I'm gonna have to like really hunker down on this like a little bit more than everything else? What was something like that for you?
I wouldn't really say it was one specific rating. I studied really hard for like my multi, um, because I recognized that, hey, flying these higher performance aircraft and with new different types of aerodynamics, it's a little bit more dangerous than flying these Piper Archers. So obviously you want to step up your knowledge to meet that hazard.
Mm,
But I would say like with every rating there becomes a certain point, and it's what's like, hey, I gotta, sit and like try to lock in, or
yeah.
I gotta crack open the books and study this or study
Hmm.
that, right? um and I mean, yeah, I would say it's present with which each rating.
Hmm.
Each rating has like its high highs and each rating has its low lows,
Mm,
right? But each rating is work, so
yeah.
you're always in the books. You're always studying something, and if you're not, you're going back and re-reviewing. Oh, what is that instrument procedure that I did in instrument however many months ago?
Yeah.
Stuff like that.
Well, then on the flip side, what is one of your favorite memories so far?
Mm,
Something around the flying side of things,
yeah,
though.
for
Like,
sure.
what is something that kind of you're gonna remember? It kind of comes
Hmm.
up every now and then.
Probably my solo. And I think that's the cliche answer, but there's something really special about proving that you can do something by yourself for the first time. And not only that, but getting the privilege to have like family and friends around and actually see all your work come to like one specific
Hmm.
point is really cool.
Yeah.
Um, I still remember my solo and being freaked out, and then
Yeah.
having the instructor get out the plane and seeing
Yeah.
your family off the wing, like, oh, sure hope I don't embarrass myself in front of your family, right?
Yeah.
But I would say that's a big one. I think it's a cliche one, but I
Hmm.
think it means a lot to a lot of pilots for those reasons,
That,
right?
and that's what it seems like from what I've talked to people about. Well, here's a question I really haven't asked many people. I guess is what is some of the most common mistakes people might make on their solo if people do? I mean, are
Ooh.
there do people fail their solos? How does that
No,
go?
so the solos aren't really a pass fail thing.
Hmm.
It's
Yeah.
it's more of like a making sure you don't break anything, like break the aircraft or break yourself, right? Type thing. So the solos aren't really a pass fail.
Mm-hmm.
Um, One thing I will say is a common thing for solos, and it's inevitable, but is worrying and having a lot of worry about your solo.
Mm-hmm.
I think what sometimes people forget is that your instructor isn't going to sign you off for a solo unless you're absolutely ready. If your instructor signs you off for a solo and they're not ready, it's not a good instructor, right?
Right.
So your instructor is going to wait till, oh yeah, this guy is absolutely ready to solo, fly an aircraft by himself, can do everything. So you can kind of take a lot of the pressure off of yourself and your instructor of, crap, am I prepared? Am I doing this? Am I doing that? A lot of that worry is good because it means you care.
Mm-hmm.
But that worry shouldn't become anxiety, I should say. It's
Yeah.
having that anxiety around that solo. That's a big thing. But it's not really like a pass or fail or, oh, did you mess up on this or that? Probably like if you want to get technical with it, I like radio calls or
Yeah.
stuff is like what I see the most. But yeah, I wouldn't attribute it to any one thing technically.
Yeah. I see what you're saying. And that makes sense. Well, would that mean that if I were to ask you, what are some things that you would advise people to work on before going on their solo? Does that
Hmm.
mean you'd say maybe confidence in radio calls, or do you have anything else?
Yeah, so that's a good question. Yeah, that's a big part of it. Like building confidence. Obviously, all the things that pertain to solos, obviously, which is what you're going to be working on
Hmm.
in and of itself, leading
Right.
up to that solos, takeoffs, those landings, like those maneuvers, talking to approach, right, emergencies, all that stuff. You're already going to be getting some experience with. So it's really the stuff outside of that you can work on. Hey, are
Mm.
you familiar with the airfield that you're taking the solo off of, or doing the solo out of? hey, how's your confidence level? How do you feel? Do you feel like you're gonna rock the solo? Do you feel like, oh, I might have some gaps in my memory from this or that? Oh,
Hmm.
what happens if an emergency happens? Am I gonna be prepared to handle the aircraft in a safe manner if I have this emergency? Right? These are all things that you can kind of think about that is separated from your mainline training that
Hmm.
I think are important to think about whenever you're about to solo.
It's really interesting to hear those from me. Right now, what is some of the main things that you're teaching? I think you might have said something earlier, but what
Mm-hmm.
is the main things you're teaching?
So right now I'm teaching CFI, which is Certified Flight Instructor Instrument. That is the teaching, basically license to teach instrument,
Hmm.
which is another course I'm checked out for. I'm checked out for the instrument course,
Hmm.
and then commercial. So excuse me, let me back up. Instrument is like flying in the clouds, right? You can't see anything.
Yeah.
Sorry, basically anything in front of you.
Hmm.
If you were to duct tape the windows over, you could still fly pretty
Hmm.
much. Uh, and then commercial is flying for compensation or higher. You're just holding yourself to a higher standard than that of your initial ratings like private and instrument.
Did you have the choice, or do they kind of place you on what you're teaching?
Yeah, so we get placed on what we're teaching at first, right?
Hmm.
So instructors right now are always checked out for one or all three private instrument, or excuse me, sorry, double I, commercial, and instrument. And that's just because the other ratings, like private, for example,
Yeah.
um, you're flying with new students.
Hmm.
So we never really want to pair up new instructors with new students, right?
Right.
We want to have someone who's experienced in that cockpit.
Hmm.
When things go wrong in private, they normally go wrong pretty quick.
Yeah.
So we want to be sure that the CFIs have the know-how and the prior experience to be confident and have ability in that private cockpit. The second one is CFI, and you're really teaching people to a high standard on CFI, because how you teach a CFI affects that next
Mm.
generation of aviators, right? Because they're going to
Right.
be the ones who teach them. So
Hmm.
we want to be sure those CFIs are getting really high level experience, pretty much.
Hmm.
So that's where that second checkout comes from.
You're a CFI now.
I am.
We have a lot of CFIs.
Yeah.
Do you have like a vision, an ambition for yourself in your flight training career or
Yeah.
in your aviation career?
So I honestly really enjoy teaching. I hope to teach for a little while,
Hmm.
and continue getting more experience with that. I've
Hmm.
learned a ton just from being a flight instructor so far. And I got a little bit to go before I'm eligible for the airlines or anything like that.
Hmm.
But I really want to do two things. I want to fly for the National Guard. So currently trying to talk to units, places, and hopefully try and get a UPT slot, undergraduate pilot training. And that's
Okay.
basically flying for the Guard,
Yeah.
and then you have a civilian job in flying on the flip side of things, right?
Right.
And then another one that I've been looking at a lot is medevac. Just because with my past history, I think it'd be really cool to kind of like give back almost,
Hmm.
fly for that medical community. Maybe if I get the opportunity to do fixed wing critical care transport, that'd be a big thing for me.
Yeah.
So yeah, those are the two, three-ish kind of things I'm shooting for right
Is
now.
there anything in there that would benefit you in the long run in terms of your career by going into some of those careers? Because, or some of those avenues, anyways. The reason I ask this though is because there's so many ways
Mm-hmm.
to work in aviation,
Yeah.
and not, I mean, even just a pilot alone, like outside of being a pilot, there's so many ways to work in
Yeah.
aviation, like you listed earlier. But even just as a pilot, I wouldn't mind further highlighting some of those that you were speaking on.
So my ultimate goal is
Mhm.
really like probably the National Guard. That's what I really want to get to.
Mhm.
But I'm happy with whatever the journey kind of brings me
Okay.
along the way. I describe aviation like getting down to a baseball field. There's a bunch of different alleys you can take to actually get to the baseball field.
Mhm.
Um, but you're gonna end up at the baseball field either way.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like the mentality I've been trying to have, especially with some of these higher level goals that I want to accomplish. But I'm really honestly happy with flight instructing. I've been enjoying it a lot so far.
When you were training before, did you do all of your flight training through thrust?
Yeah, so
Okay.
there's a partnership between Rising Aviation and Thrust Flight,
Okay.
and I kind of got experience at Thrust initially. I did
Mhm.
a little bit of flight training and flying on my own outside, but most of my hours come from flying at Thrust.
What is some advice you would have for someone who's
Mm.
considering flight training? I say that because well, I mean you're doing what some people would really like to do.
Honestly, depends on the individual, but some of the main pieces of advice I think I can give is that, hey, have that passion for the career field, have perseverance, and know that you're not going to get everything right on the first try. Aviation is super difficult. It's really technical. Even us as flight instructors, a lot of people like to say, I heard, I think it was Bill, one of our DPEs that we use around here, but we say aviation is like practice is really like practicing medicine, but we don't want to say we're practicing aviation because that sounds bad to the to the
Yeah,
general
yeah.
public, but it really is, right? It's a job of like constant learning, and as a student you have a lot of learning to do, right?
Hmm.
So have perseverance, right? Pick yourself up. If you mess up a lazy eight, if you mess up a steep turn, if you mess up a landing, that's okay. Those things happen, right?
Hmm.
That knowledge, that experience is going to come with time. This isn't something that you can be great at on the first attempt. um, and then have that perseverance, have that love for it, right?
Yeah.
Get yourself immersed in aviation. Um, it's really easy. You're working super hard as a flight student, and it's really easy sometimes to take the joy out of things. But realize why you got into it in the first place and compare. Hey, am I happy doing this?
Mm.
And hopefully that answer is yes, right? So
Some people know that they would like to fly,
yeah,
and maybe this is a little harder to answer. I don't know if maybe I don't know if people will relate or if you'll
yeah,
relate. But the idea is that some people know they want to do it, and they're kind of just waiting
hmm
for something to push
yeah.
them. What do you think about that?
So just do it. Like, obviously, be smart about it. Get yourself into the like right financial situation, and
Uh-huh.
get yourself into the right stepping stone to where you can do it.
Hmm.
But like, don't have hesitance purely based off of uh, maybe certain conceptions or certain stereotypes that you might have about the career field. If
Hmm.
you're really unsure about it, like, I don't know, do another discovery flight, right? Go to an AOPA event, go to an aviation event, meet
Hmm.
some aviation professionals, right? Have someone take you up in their airplane.
Right.
Do all that so you can be like, yeah, I want to do this. And once you know you want to do it, and once you're in the position to do it, then do it, right?
You might know what a discovery flight is. If you don't, just know that it's a flight you can go on with a certified flight instructor or whoever is allowed to fly the plane, and they'll allow you to sort of feel the controls of the plane, even though you're not a pilot. And a lot of times that does it for people. That's like, oh, I love this. And I've talked to so many people on this podcast that have said, oh yeah, I signed up 2 weeks later. I mean,
Yeah.
I just signed up, and I was like, oh, that's crazy. So if you're interested, look up a flight school near you. Ask about a discovery flight. Of course, Thrust Flight gives discovery flights as well. If we're anywhere near you, or if you're considering moving, then come check us out. We'll be happy to take you up in the sky. We just got some new planes with AC, and we'd love to show them off. But I did a discovery flight sort of
Yeah.
with Keelan.
Okay, cool.
We were kind of filming some things, so we had to go to a couple local airports up
Yeah.
in North Texas,
Yeah.
and it was cool because I didn't realize I'd been in a plane a handful of times at this point
Yeah.
since working here, and I was just riding in the plane.
Yeah.
But he's like, "All right, now he had me take the yoke and put my feet on the rudders and then control the ailerons and everything." And I was like, "Oh, this is different." I
Oh
didn't
yeah.
know. I didn't really attempt to perceive what it was like. You just see people in the plane
Oh yeah.
in the movies like pulling or whatever, and it's like okay. But this was cool because I don't know. It's just you can't really explain that
Yeah.
to someone who hasn't
Yeah.
felt it, I guess. And I didn't get that
There's
until I did it, of
there's
course.
nothing like it. Like
Yeah.
the most uh, the thing that has the most correlation is probably like driving a car or like racing a car, but even that it's like not 3D. So it's like
Exactly.
it's pretty wild actually being able to maneuver an aircraft for the first time. It's cool.
And
It's
to your
cool.
point, that's the best I can do to describe it too. Is it's like yeah, you want to try to say something about a car, but it's like you said, 3D.
Yeah.
There's more dimensions in which you could control
Yeah.
the machine to
Yeah.
go.
Yeah.
And the controls. It's kind of interesting how they're correlated.
Oh yeah.
So I don't know. I think it's very
It's
interesting.
cool. It's a lot of
Yeah.
like hand-eye coordination, a lot of that type of stuff.
Yeah.
It's fun. It's
Well,
fun.
also just it was surprising to know, and I remember asking this in one of the earliest videos I made here, but um, in a car, you turn
Hmm.
left and right with the exact same
Oh
coordinated
yeah.
movement of your hands,
Oh
but
yeah.
that is not what you do in a plane.
No.
And can you talk a little bit about like the difference or the realizations of what it's like to take controls?
Yeah, for
Mhm.
for sure. So
Mhm.
like probably the biggest thing that I see people do is like, oh my gosh, I have like a third dimension now to maneuver the aircraft in. So people like to start like pushing forward and aft on the stick, feeling what zero G feels like, feeling what
Exactly.
G like G force, right?
Uh-huh.
Feeling what positive G force feels like, and that's always pretty cool. But there's a lot to think about when you're maneuvering the aircraft, right?
Mhm.
You put the airplane into a turn. You want to be sure you're staying coordinated with the rudder
Mhm.
pedals.
Mhm.
I just halved my horizontal component of lift. So what do I need to do? I have to add more lift to the aircraft. Oh, well, how do I do that? I need power, I need pitch, all that type of stuff that goes into flying an aircraft, which eventually becomes automatic response. Like
Exactly.
you just do it, and it's pretty cool
Yeah.
once you get to that stage. But yeah, it's a
It's a
lot.
lot to take in at
Yeah.
first. Yeah. Uh, Flying a plane is very much of a technique and a skill, it seems
Mm-hmm.
like, right? But it seems like there's no shortage of knowledge to be had either.
Oh yeah.
So I guess I'm a little curious about that. I've always been really intrigued with things that you have to know a lot about,
Mm-hmm.
but require a lot of presence and
Yeah.
technique.
Yeah, that's so true.
So is there a balancing act?
There is. Like, they make tons of books about how to maneuver aircraft. Like, you have books like Stick and Rudder, right?
Right.
Literally, like, a book that just goes over, like, the intricacies of maneuvering and flying an aircraft in its most basic sense.
Hmm.
However, reading that book and actually flying the aircraft is totally different things. A lot of the times we use this word when we're teaching students. We say, oh man, it's just reps, right? It's just doing it. And what we
Hmm.
mean by that is, it takes time to build that physical skill of, like, hand-eye coordination, for
Hmm.
example. Or what does a slipping or skidding turn look like? Or how does it feel to descend at the proper airspeed? Or
Hmm.
what does it feel like to do a good landing, right? These are things that are kind of like hardwired into us in automatic response as we
Hmm.
move through training. And the only way to kind of build that is to really do it.
Hmm.
So and after you get to a certain point, like, sometimes you'll have a student ask you, wait, how'd you do that? And you'll be like, do what? I just did it, right?
Hmm.
And that's what we're trying to build in students, for example, right?
There's a lot that you have to learn and prove that you can at least memorize
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
before you get in the sky,
Oh,
right?
that's so true.
So in a lot of fields or industries, it's like, oh, just get started and you'll
Yeah.
figure it out as you go. With aviation, it's not a luxury that you
Yeah.
really want to try to exercise,
Yeah.
let alone do you have. So I don't know. I guess my question would be, what's it like outside of the plane when it comes to flight training?
Oh,
Can you,
it's
for people who think, oh, you're just going to learn how
yeah.
to, yeah, for people who think you're just going to learn how to fly a plane, what's it like everywhere else outside of flying the
Oh,
plane?
it's hard work for sure. Especially outside of the aircraft.
Mhm.
You spend the majority of your time going over a ground knowledge, we
Mhm.
call it, and that's just all the inner workings and procedures of what we're going to do when
Mhm.
we get to the air. I mentioned how a lot of flying is that, know-how of how to maneuver the aircraft, that feel of it.
Mhm.
Well, flying is one of the few careers, at least that I know of, that mixes that. Oh, you need to have just a feel for it, to you need to have some real technical ability to understand how things like systems work, right?
Mhm.
Or troubleshoot emergencies, stuff like that, right?
Mhm.
Or even common sense, that you have to build in flight training, and a
Mhm.
lot of that comes in ground. There's a lot of ground that goes into being able to fly an aircraft. Even when I'm just planning fun flights by myself, I'm taking some of my family members up, taking some of my friends up.
Mhm.
We spend a ton of time in the ground planning stage,
Mhm.
just to be able to take that airplane into the sky, right?
Right.
So,
Yeah, no, I appreciate that answer because that's something I feel like I haven't got to highlight quite the way I've wanted to. When I first started working here, I remember not really understanding how the program worked.
mhm,
If it was like a trade school, if it was like a
yeah,
university, or if it was just a program, like what did that mean? And we do this podcast so that people can get a little of insight
yeah,
about flight training or aviation in general. And I think I take that very serious. I want to try
mhm,
to make sure I ask those kind of questions. So for our viewers and our listeners, just understand that at least here at Thrust Flight, what we do is we have a fast-paced program where you come in and you're going to get through at least 6 of your ratings, or at least that's the goal. I mean, we have the goal of getting you through 6 ratings in less than 12 months. It's designed to be done in 9 months, but there's a lot of variables there, including weather. And I say that to say that if you're looking into flight training and you're looking into flight schools, a few things to think about are going to be what's the weather like in that location. I mean, technically you can do it anywhere, but if the weather is very volatile, then it may be difficult to handle your schedule. Right? Is the program fast paced, or if it kind of just chill? Will you be able to work while you're in flight training? What kind of aircraft do they have? How many instructors do they have? Do they have ground courses? For example, Thrust we do have ground courses in a classroom where you go over things with instructors. Not every program's going to have that. They give you maybe resources, hopefully at least, and you learn. But some programs or flight instructors will just teach you how to maneuver the plane and let you do the rest. So every person's different. Everyone needs their own sort of learning style and structure, or maybe less of. So look into those things. Ask questions. If you're ever curious about what we offer, of course, give us a call. But if you're nearby, if there's one 5 minutes, 10 minutes up the road, and it's at some flight school that I wouldn't know existed, give them a call and ask them some questions. Anyone who, you could probably tell me agree with this, but anyone in aviation loves to talk about aviation. If they fly, they love talking about flying. So go ask some questions, and I'm sure they'll be happy to answer. Do you have anything that you'd like to make a note of for anyone who is just enjoying this podcast, whether as a student or maybe a potential future student?
Oh yeah, maybe like don't stop at the podcast, right?
Yeah.
Like you said, go out, get involved in your local aviation community, and that doesn't just have to be flight schools. It can be OBAP chapters, it can be AOPA chapters, it can be business aviation chapters, right? Get experience with people in and around aviation, and really get immersed with it, because there's a lot to be had in this career field. It's not necessarily just airlines, or it's not necessarily just corporate, or it's not necessarily just flying in the military, right? There's a lot of stuff to be had in the aviation community, and I think it's important to kind of reverse yourself. Right?
And one last note I'd like to make about some of that is that throughout all the differences that are within aviation, and especially with all the careers, I'm starting to see that the common thread of aviation itself is really strong between different career paths, whether it be the A and the P's, or a pilot, or whatever it may be, a dispatch.
Oh, it's so true. Yeah. Aviation is really, I always say it's really small and interconnected. It's interconnected in that the fact that like every career field you can find inside of aviation. We have lawyers, we have mechanics, we have aviation doctors, right? We have people who work in the military in aviation, right? There's just a lot to be actually had in the career. We got teachers in the career field, right?
And there's so many skill sets that transfer over into aviation. So again, if you're still listening, I hope that you enjoyed this episode of Pilots Say What, because I've enjoyed talking to Hamilton today. So thank you for joining us. Yeah, absolutely. The last thing I could say, if you are still watching, I'd assume you enjoyed it on a level enough to subscribe. I see that on the back end, we have a lot of regular listeners who aren't subscribed. But if you did subscribe, that would really help us out and help more people find our podcast that could see value in it. Otherwise, give us some stories or some questions in the comments. We have a lot going on in the comments typically. And of course, hit that like button. My name is Zach. I'll be seeing you guys on the next episode of Pilots Say What, where we hear what pilots have to say. Thank you.